This is one of the areas where I get into trouble for being honest. And I'm going to depart from a lot of my conservative PCC colleagues. I'm not a libertarian. I've said that I'm very much a one nation conservative, but there are certain issues, and drugs is one of them, where it seems pretty bloody obvious to me that we've been doing the same thing and expecting a different result, and that cannot be intelligent or sensible. I'm not remotely ideal. One of the reasons I'm a one nation conservative is because I don't buy into sort of this ideology and treating sort of various sort of political views as religion. I'm a Roman Catholic. I get the religion bit. I just don't think that and politics have any place together. And so as somebody who I would consider myself a pragmatist, it's just the bloody obvious. It doesn't work. Prohibition, as we have designed it, does not work. And actually, my father retired to Spain. Well, I say retired, worked out there, but was in Spain, until he died.
Which part of Hertfordshire?
Hartford.
Oh, okay. So I know it. So I'm in Bedford.
Oh, okay. Yeah, not a million miles at all.
Yeah, and it's why I was really looking forward to speaking with. Did Holly give you the background?
None at all.
So I'm kind of
I've come to this completely, which sometimes is quite nice.
Yeah, I mean,
with no.
I'm here to fight the office of the PCC. So
exactly.
I'm at war with my local PCC.
Bedford. So you've got a new Labour one because you had Festus.
Yes, Festus, who's quite interesting. I think he wants it back.
I saw Festus last week at conference.
So I've been talking to Festus. We've got John Tizard.
Yes, that's it.
Who I think is very, very weak.
He's an interesting human. I've only met him once, and in his defence, let's try and give everyone a fair hearing. In his defence, he was very, very new in, but he said a few things that I thought, oh, you're going to struggle here.
Well, so the context is probably similar to most places, maybe not Surrey. We have a town centre that's dying.
Yeah.
We have a lot of petty crime, a lot of drugs, alcoholism in the town. I mean, the town centre's just become a place where if you've got kids, you might not want to take them.
Which we're not experiencing in Surrey, I have to say, in the same way. I'm conscious you are, but
There must be some spot, like Guildford maybe?
There are bits of Guildford where we've worked very hard at designing it out. But but if we hadn't, then we'd absolutely see it. I know you're chief constable as well, as it happens.
Is that
Trevor Road? Trevor.
I thought it was Andy Smith now.
Oh, has it changed? Really? That's very recent if it has. Okay.
Andy's great. That. Andy's brilliant.
Good. Yeah. Okay, good.
So, but it's all the issues you'd expect. If you're coming into the town centre, you are seeing an increase in homelessness.
Yeah.
You're seeing a massive rise in just open drug dealing and taking and HMOs, which are now crack dens.
Yeah. And
very obvious crack dens, which have all the issues around them. The public car parks being places for begging and taking drugs.
Yeah.
But people are openly smoking crack on the high street and not caring. Masses of shoplifting. And then just kind of like roaming groups of people with issues of either drugs, alcoholism, or youth on e-bikes, scooters, and generally just being little shits.
So what I recognise from Surrey of that lot, as it were, is shoplifting.
Yeah,
obviously. ASB has decreased, actually, if you look at the long-term trends in Surrey, but we're definitely seeing it without a doubt. I think I wouldn't necessarily say open crack dealing, but at a lower level, definitely cannabis.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
And that dealing. So Surrey we're a bit of a funny microcosm.
But we've got money there from people who travel into London.
We have money.
But you know what? Bedford has money. The villages.
Has some serious money. Bedford does around, when you get around the villages, Bedford has some serious money.
But the town centre, then add to that, the town centre has also suffered what other town centres have suffered from, which is retail parks, supermarkets selling everything online, and just being hard to make money in the town centre. So more and more businesses are closing. So it's like a death spiral.
And you're getting in, obviously, things like You're getting in more charity shops, which
Yes.
have a place on the high street, but
Mhm.
not the whole high street. And you're also seeing, I don't know, you're seeing sort of Turkish barbers and dessert shops. Nobody eats
Yep.
that much dessert.
A lot of dessert shop. There must be 4 or 5 in the
Yeah.
town centre.
I don't eat that much dessert, and I'm a type 1 diabetic with a sweet tooth.
Well, so I wonder if a lot of these things do well on as the dark kitchens, whereby so we don't go to the dessert shops, but once every couple of weeks the kids are like, Dad,
Yeah.
I want a milkshake and a cookie, the white,
American.
that pile of stuff where you spend £40 and you've got 2 desserts. But we have got growth in that. We have got not so many of the Turkish barbers.
Okay.
But we do have the vape shops.
Yeah. Oh, the vape shops. There's another one.
There's one which is like a mini market vape shop. Like I see a lot
Do
of
they
people.
also fix your phone?
No, there was one
Oh.
of those, but I do see. Look, I think I know where the crackheads are selling
where
this
it's-
stuff.
yeah, exactly.
So
We know where it is.
the shape of the town centre is changing, and then you go to the retail park, and it's not little boutique local businesses; it's national chains, but
Yeah.
it's safe.
Yeah.
There's no real issues, so it's a real problem. So I try to attack it. You might have heard of this or not heard of this, but there's not enough police in the town centre because the
Yeah.
police are stretched. So I put private security in there for 3 months on a Saturday as a pilot.
Yeah.
Which was to test whether this would have an impact.
Yeah.
There's an area called St. Peter's Green, which is full of drunks every Saturday, ruining it for families. We got rid of them. We were there to support the community, but it really pissed off the PCC.
Oh, that's interesting. Whereas I work very closely with our BIDs, our business improvement districts,
Right.
which we've got across the county, and they are phenomenal. Staines is a really good example where we had particular problems. We have a retail park. We've got the town centre, and then you've got a retail park, and they are beside each other, and they're very good at feeding each other in a really good way. So I will go and park in the retail park because parking's easier,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll do the big M&S there, and I'll go to Next, and I'll go to the big Boots because they're the big stores I want to use. But because it's a short walk straight through in a pedestrianised area to the high street, I will also go to the high street and I'll use Waterstones and I'll use the independent shops there and I'll use all of those stores. But we were seeing, particularly on Sundays, particular incidents with antisocial behaviour and low-level crime, and to an extent shoplifting. That's definitely increased. And the business improvement district there, a brilliant woman, Joanna Santos, who runs the business improvement district there, they brought in their own security. And our PCs and PCSOs, and I love them. We work with them.
Right.
And
Okay.
that, to me, is the kind of relationship where it benefits everybody. Because you've got the stores, like the big stores, like the Next and the M&S and the Boots, who are contributing to the business improvement district. And therefore, the business improvement district are able to hire security. And everybody knows what their job is. Like, there's no confusion. Security aren't trying to pretend they're police officers. Police officers are happy to let security get on with it, whether it's at the cinema, outside the cinema on a Friday evening or whatever it is. And there's a club there as well. And everybody knows what their job is and gets on with it. And it works really, really well. And I think and that's got to be the key to it. To me,
Yes.
that's got to be the answer. And as a police and crime commissioner, I think my job is to facilitate that and make that work, and to have those conversations with the business improvement district and say, right, where are you struggling with the police a bit? Have you got problems? Yeah, well, we've got, we don't really have a relationship with the borough commander. Great, let me introduce you to the borough commander. Let's have that relationship. And I think that's the thing with PCCs. We're obviously not police officers. I'm really, really clear on that. I'm not a fan of ex-police officers becoming PCCs.
Because
so Surrey Police, it's about 4,500 people in Surrey Police we've got over about 2,500 officers and the rest are staff. I've got a chief constable. I've got a brilliant deputy chief constable who's actually about to retire. I've got another one about to start who's also going to be brilliant, I can tell. They don't need another police officer sitting in my chair. That's not what they need. They've got the expertise. I'll occasionally, particularly by older officers, get called ma'am when I'm walking around. And it does make me laugh a bit because it makes me feel very old. But also, I don't think I've earned that title.
Yes.
I didn't go through police college. I didn't go through, as was Hendon. I haven't earned the stripes on my shoulders. I don't have stripes on my shoulders and I haven't earned them. I've come up through politics and law in different ways.
but you seem popular. From my research, yes, of course, there may be people from a different political party who want to find reasons to criticise you.
Oh, yeah.
But you seem fairly popular.
I think if I am, it's probably slightly by accident. I think...
Take the credit.
Well, yeah, but thank you. I don't think I set out to be. I know I didn't set out to be. I think my problem with anything is I'm not a very good politician. And if I'm popular, I think that's why. Because I'm a bad politician.
What was your political background?
So I started working for the Conservative Party before the 2005 general election.
Okay.
The central office, as then was. Initially as a volunteer, then doing sort of external bits and pieces, and then became business liaison, working within the party, so working with businesses and with lobbyists. And then when David Cameron, we had obviously the 2005 general election, David Cameron became leader early 2006, and I went in doing the same job, doing business liaison, but went in to work in Alan Duncan's office. Alan was Shadow Trade and Industry, as the team then was. And this was working under the David Cameron, George Osborne, Oliver Letwin sort of triad of some brilliant policy and thinking coming out, and working within that and developing business policy, and energy came under that team as well. So working with some really, really interesting people from the Conservative Research Department and researchers who were thinking about all of those things. So I came up through that, had deferred bar school to go and do that, went back to bar school, realised criminal law was what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Realised quite quickly I didn't really like other junior barristers. Mm-hmm. And odd as it might sound, I missed politics. I missed the kind of, I suppose, the immediacy of it. And so left bar school, having decided I didn't want to practice law, left bar school sort of looking around for what the hell do I do now? This is what I've wanted to do for a really, really long time. In my early mid-20s, what do I do? And a friend came and said, oh, the MP I'm working for is looking for somebody to come and support in the office. He's particularly interested in Middle East. My master's was in Islamic law. And, you know, I know you've got a background in Islamic law and Sharia law. Would you be interested in coming and helping him sort of on some of that stuff? And he needs some secretarial PA support as well. And you've been in Parliament, you get it. So I went and did that, and kind of that.
Who was that for?
That was Crispin Blunt.
Okay.
And that in itself is a complicated relationship. But yeah, and so I kind of got sucked back in. That wasn't the plan. The plan was I'll go and do that for a few months while I figure out what I'm going to do with my life.
But PCC is then a nice merger of all.
Yeah, actually, as it happens, it is. Yeah, so I did that for about another 10 years. Stood for Parliament in 2015, and then went into the private sector.
Okay.
And then this came up. The PCC role came up by chance, really.
Okay. So in Bedford, we don't have the bid anymore. Got voted out.
That's really disappointing.
I don't think it was doing a particularly good job.
Yeah.
It become very bureaucratic, and I just don't think people felt like they were getting a good service from it. They did provide security for the nighttime economy. Okay. Nobody had an issue with.
Yeah.
But when I provide it as a private individual, people are very concerned. So they got called my goons, or they got called, one councillor called it the paramilitary wing of a coffee shop. It's good. So it got very criticised. We're quite transparent. We keep logs. We share them out. But just
and there are regulations that you'll have to have. You know, it's not a it's not a free for all.
And we worked with the police, the chief constable, chief inspector. I can't remember which person, Andy Smith, and met with the police regularly. But the PCC was constantly critical of it. And has been.
And that's the current PCC.
That's the current PCC. Yeah. And I'm also very critical of him. So the reason I wanted to meet you is to kind of outline what my criticisms are and hear you sell it as a role. Because the way I looked at it is I'm not sure the politicisation of the police is a good thing. Mm. And
there's a topic.
Well, it feels politicised where I am.
Yeah.
And I'm also not sure if it's a good use of budget, because we don't have enough officers. And when I look at the department, it's I think its budget's 2.5 million. I was thinking £2.5 million.
That's very high. I mean, that sounds to me like you're looking at a particular figure, but
I think it's 2.5 million, and I think they asked for it to go up to 2.7.
Yeah.
And when you look at the jobs they're recruiting for, it's like analysts, PR people, and then I see the amount of PR, and I'm thinking, you've got to prove yourself all the time as a political office.
That's one.
Does this distort things?
Yeah, I think they're good questions, and I think they're important questions because there is a lot of misunderstanding around them.
Yes.
Around that. Yeah. So I think they're really good questions.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into it. No, because I considered running for PCC on a platform that I wouldn't take the salary, and I would do nothing. And I would hand everything back to the police to run.
Yeah.
I would remove my entire department and I would give my budget to the police. More of a statement.
Yeah.
But that could be very naive. I obviously don't know the role. I don't know why it was brought in really. I kind of do for oversight. But I've seen
it was replacing. Remember, it wasn't new.
Yes.
That's an important thing. That oversight was there. The governance, it's the governance piece is the important piece there. And before police and crime commissioners, you had police authorities, which were made up of councillors, politicians, people who'd been elected by their local, but ward by ward, and they elected within. You'd have the police authority made up of, let's say, for argument's sake, 12 councillors. And some members of the public as well, but mostly councillors. And then within that group of councillors, they would elect a chairman and a deputy chairman of the police authority. Now, certainly in Surrey, those people earned more than I do and my deputy does combined. So you're not saving anything in that sense. And they had one of their roles was being chairman of the police authority. Or deputy chairman of the police authority. And they were elected because they were elected by their constituents by ward, but to be a local councillor, not to be chairman of the police authority. And it was felt, and PCCs were in the 2005 and again in the 2010 Conservative Manifesto. It was felt that actually what's needed is somebody that the public can look to and vote for and say, right, that is the person whose job it is to hold the force to account.
Which is good.
So they weren't, it wasn't, let's politicise the police, let's bring in somebody for the first time who is elected to oversee this. It was, let's have somebody who the public can actually name and see and who's elected solely to do that, as opposed to a ward councillor who, could be doing lots of other things and isn't held to account arguably in the same way as a PCC is. So they were brought in to do that. There were a lot of independents elected originally, including in Surrey, actually. And so independents did quite well. And I think that's partly because of this politicisation, as you say, of the police bit. That message was put out quite a lot at the beginning. I take a different view on that, which is that there are always going to be attempts to politicise the police. We're seeing it an awful lot at the moment, right? We can see police being this political football that gets kicked around by all political parties, quite frankly, and individuals, which arguably leads chief constables and senior police officers to have to defend themselves. I mean, Mark Rowley is frequently on LBC having to defend the Metropolitan Police. Other chief constables find themselves occasionally in the same position of feeling they have to defend the police. You've got the National Police Chiefs Council and the chairman of that, who is the former Surrey chief constable, having to defend the police. I don't think the police should be having to defend themselves against political attacks. I can understand why they need to, and particularly somebody like Mark, who is again a former Surrey chief constable. But actually, the police have always been politicised. So it's me as police and crime commissioner in Surrey who should be taking those political attacks, I would argue, because I am a politician. Aim them at me, don't aim them at my chief constable. Let me defend it, because he can't. He can't come out and say what he thinks about certain things, because that's not his role, and he wouldn't.
And you don't shy away from it.
And I don't shy away from it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a bad politician, because I'm quite happy to say what I think about stuff.
But I could make the argument that makes you a good politician.
It's an argument. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make me a party politically good one.
No, but self-censorship is censorship, and I think we see a lot of that.
Yeah, we do. And I understand it. I understand why people self-censor. And we all do it to an extent, right? It's just manners, to a point.
But it can lead to bad outcomes. I mean, you threw yourself right into the trans issue. I agree with you 100%. As somebody who's a women's football team, this was an issue for us at one point.
Yeah, that.
And I think it was a lack of backbone and cowardice from many people that allowed that to become an issue. It wasn't. We don't need to get into that now, but I would make the argument that makes you a good politician, because that's what we're looking for in politics, and we haven't had for a long time.
We haven't had it. And I do think that one of the reasons we've got ourselves politically into the mess that we have, and I do think we're in a mess politically,
yes,
is because as a political class, we, and I'm prepared to take, a certain amount of responsibility for this, we have been telling the voters a story, if you like, that's not necessarily true. I also think that the electorate, and I say this as a member of the electorate, I think we have to take some responsibility for this. I genuinely believe that by and large we get the politicians we deserve.
Yes.
And yeah, we could discuss that, but I do think, and I think that we've entered into this very weird time where you look at the last general election, where all parties, but Labour won, so let's look at Labour. Labour were saying things that I think most of us were looking at and going, that's just not possible. Mm-hmm. The spending doesn't add up. The promises don't add up. The numbers don't add up. And you could say that about other parties just as easily, but Labour won. And we're now, over a year later and going, well, obviously that didn't add up. But we knew that, right? Mm-hmm. The electorate entered into a bargain with a political party that surely it knew couldn't live up to that. And yet as politicians, as a political class, we keep telling people, oh yeah, the triple lock, that's fine. Triple lock is safe. What a load of utter rubbish.
4.8%.
Utter crap, right? I mean, I do think the triple lock is one of those things that we have got to be honest about as Conservatives, apart from anything, and say it's just no longer sustainable. And it hasn't been sustainable actually for a really, really long time. And it was a political convenience to suggest that it was. And I don't think the British electorate are stupid by any means.
No, and they get it right sometimes.
We've entered into this bargain whereby we'll tell you lies, you'll believe them, and then when we can't deliver it, you'll hold us accountable for it. And we go through this constant, I mean, you can pick anything, the NHS, you can pick policing, you can pick. So how do we get out of that, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, so my sympathy for the electorate is where are our options?
Yeah, and that's fair.
Where are our options? When you went to the ballot box at the last election, again, I didn't vote. I didn't believe in any party. We had a Conservative Party that let the country down for, I wouldn't say 14 years, but a significant part. We were due for a change, and what were we offered was a Labour Party that made promises. But I don't think people. This is the problem, I think, with the electorate. I don't think the electorate really understands basic economics.
Yeah,
and that should be the starting point. Is if you understand basic economics, because I think a lot of us, there's lots of issues we care about, but most of all, we care about the money in our pocket at the end of the month, absolutely. And everything's downstream from that. But it's very tough for the. It's very tough because to become a politician, you have to come to terms with the idea that you will have intrusion into your life. You'll be harassed. You might get murdered. I mean, it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
You're not going to earn that much money. I mean, if you're smart, it's an intelligent person these days. Leaving university is probably thinking about how do I get to my first six-figure salary and how do I start earning £250,000 a year? As a politician, you're not going to earn much. No. It's like being in the NBA. You could only be there for 3 years and then you back out into the private sector. It's tough. And so I don't think it's designed in a way to attract the best people.
Oh, not at all. No, it absolutely isn't. And any of us who were in the private sector and then came into politics or came back into politics having been in the private sector will have taken a pay cut.
Yeah. And look, some people have come in with like, fuck you money. I mean, excuse my language.
Yeah, it's true. But that in itself is a problem. That's part of the problem.
But I also think that's helpful. So someone like Rupert Lowe, I find interesting because he doesn't need his salary and he says what he thinks. Andrew Griffith is also, been successful in the private sector. Is it Andrew? No, is it Andrew Griffith?
Are you thinking of the Conservative shadow cabinet?
Yes.
Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's Andrew I'm thinking of. Who was the guy who was at Sky? Or was that Andrew? We had him in here.
You've had Andrew Griffith.
We had Andrew, but we had the other
Andrew
guy.
I know.
It was the other guy. I forgot his name. I'm so bad with names. I forget everyone's names. But anyway, so we don't attract...
Jeremy Hunt, in my own patch, is one who, made money and went in. Philip Hammond, obviously, made money and came in. And I remember very, very early on when I was at university and having a visit from a former cabinet member of Thatcher's, actually. And I think I was the only girl around the table, as any woman around the table at this dinner. And somebody asked him for advice. One of the, dare I say it, Tory boys asked him for advice about going into politics. And his advice was, before you do that, the thing you need is independent wealth.
Yes.
And he'd worked his way up in the insurance business. And he said, because you need that, because what you want to be is in a position where if you are a minister or you are in the cabinet and you are earning a, obviously, sizable salary compared to your MP's salary, particularly then, you want to be in a position where if you disagree with the Prime Minister, you disagree with your government, you're in a position to resign and not have to think about, if I resign on a principle, am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? Am I going to be able to my kids still be able to go to school if you're putting your kids through private schools, which a lot of them were and do. And that sort of stuck with me as well, that to put yourself in a position where you've reached the heights of politics and you're in the cabinet and you're earning a significant salary, not to be able to take a principled position and resign, as people like Robin Cook did and others have done, famously, because you were worried about whether you could pay the mortgage.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
I mean, I 100% agree. But I think there's more points to it. Yes, you have to be able to afford. I mean, Ian Dent's book, How Westminster Works and Why It Doesn't, have you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that outlines all of that. But you also have to be able to take principled positions and accept the criticism that comes with that.
Absolutely.
And some people, I think, fear the media, fear social media, fear backlash from friends and certain circles in the community, which means you don't tend to get people who act with both principle and integrity because of all these different fears.
You've also got experience. And I think one of the dangers with that particular view of independent wealth and getting yourself to that position is also that let's be honest, that immediately removes whole cohorts of society from becoming parliamentarians, which is also really, really dangerous, because we want people from different, and I say this as a Conservative, we want people who are nurses and teachers and manual workers to aspire to that as well. So how do we balance that? I think the answer is we need to pay particularly our MPs. And this is not a case for PCCs, but I think we need to pay our MPs better.
Oh no, I totally agree. I mean, I look at Singapore. They pay them something like £500,000 a year. I would absolutely pay that.
And you do that, and you that is the point at which you can say no second jobs, and we're going to be very restrictive on what you can claim and all of that.
Yeah, but then also the second jobs thing's interesting because politics was meant to be a part-time job.
Always. It was only ever intended to be a part-time job. It's not anymore. Because
of the demands that come from it. But yes, but then also, you can think about that again. If you're paying someone £500,000 a year, they've got even more to lose.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't like the whip.
You don't like the whip?
I don't like the whip. I understand why it exists.
Yeah.
But I don't like the whip. I don't like that somebody who's been a politician for years can be suspended for disagreeing on a point of principle.
Yeah.
That to me is also a problem. Look, that's the thing. The whole thing's just a mess. Like, I don't even know if it can be fixed.
Well, I mean, that's it. It was one of the things. I'm very fortunate. I do think, as a police and crime commissioner, I've been spoiled politically, which has put me off seeking a parliamentary role.
Yeah,
because don't take the whip. I can obviously be suspended by the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party can say you said something which we find unacceptable, and we don't consider you. We are therefore suspending your membership of the party, which would mean I could no longer call myself a Conservative PCC, but I would still be a police and crime commissioner. I'm held accountable solely by my constituents, the 1.2 million people who live in Surrey, the 900,000 electors in Surrey. They're the people who hold me accountable. They're the only people who can remove me from my position, short of me committing a criminal offence.
So it's similar to a mayor.
Very, very similar. And in fact, a lot of, particularly the new mayors, will take in the PCC role. Sadiq Khan is PCC, Andy Burnham's PCC, Tracy Brabin is a PCC. The new mayors that are coming in, Sussex, Hampshire, Essex, Norfolk, Suffolk, will be mayor and PCC.
So yes, we have a Labour PCC and a Conservative mayor, and actually that creates a conflict.
Yeah.
And it creates a political conflict.
Is it a healthy conflict, do you think? Because not all conflict is bad.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, actually, now I didn't know there are people who did both roles. Yeah. Now you've said that just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So Sadiq Khan is the Police and Crime Commissioner for London. So he is the person. The Met is slightly different because Mark Rowley does have to answer to both the Home Secretary and to the PCC, who is Sadiq. Manchester is probably a better example, where Andy Burnham is also the Police and Crime Commissioner and therefore the person with responsibility for appointing Steve Watson, who is a brilliant Chief Constable in Greater Manchester. And it does make sense. Surrey is looking at going that way. Like I said, Hampshire's going that way in May, Sussex, Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex.
So you could become mayor and PCC?
In theory, if Surrey goes that way and I put myself forward and sort of went through all the stages, then yes. And certainly my opposite numbers in Sussex and in Hampshire, Norfolk, Suffolk is becoming one mayoral. But with two police forces. My opposite number there in Suffolk is they are all the Conservative candidate for mayor in those areas for May. And if they win, they will go from being PCC to being mayor with the PCC. Now, there is a requirement for those mayoral roles to appoint a deputy mayor for policing. So Andy Burnham has Kate Green, who's his deputy mayor for policing. And you can delegate certain responsibilities, but ultimately the mayor is the Police and Crime Commissioner legally.
Interesting. So where does your remit start and end, and where does the Chief Constable's remit start and end? And do they essentially report to you? So
PCCs, under the legislation, have responsibility for the totality of policing in their police area.
It sounds like the Chief Constable does report to you.
The Chief Constable has operational independence from me, from the Home Office, from the Home Secretary, from the government. So I set the police and crime plan. I appoint the Chief Constable. So our current Chief Constable, Tim DeMeyer, who I appointed back in January, just over 2 years ago, who's brilliant. He's been in force for 2.5 years, has made a genuine difference to the force. I mean, a really quite dramatic difference to the force. So my role is to appoint him. If something went horribly wrong, my role would be to suspend and dismiss him.
Mm-hmm. What would be considered horribly wrong outside of like personal
Oh, we've seen it happen in recent years where PCCs have had to suspend and then ultimately dismiss. So gross misconduct in office.
Outside of gross misconduct, can it be for performance?
Yes, it could be. In theory, yeah, it could be for performance. There's a process to go through, of course, as you'd expect, and you'd want there to be a process. There is a process, but yes. So I set the police and crime plan in consultation with residents and various other people. And then the chief constable has to have regard for that. A chief constable who doesn't have regard for their PCC's police and crime plan is going to find they're very quickly in trouble with the PCC. But the PCC owns, I mean, again, you get back to the totality of policing, but the PCC owns the budget. So Surrey Police's budget is about £320 million a year. We get 45% of that from the government. We get 55%. We're the only county in the country where more of that comes from our taxpayers, which is an issue.
Why is that an issue?
Because we're the only county, we're the only police force in the United Kingdom where more of policing is paid for by council tax.
Again, so why is that an issue? So for example, if the mayor came forward and said, I mean, just even in the village I live in, very recently we're now getting, it's like a plague of driveway crime where people are just coming on, checking doors and stealing. My son's car was broken into, sunglasses, a wallet and something else was stolen. But on the camera we're seeing it's almost nightly. And we've got all the issues in the town. I've told you the other villages have got issues. If the mayor came forward and said, we want to increase the police's budget, we're going to add £10, £50 to the council tax, I'm going to pay it immediately.
Yeah.
I don't care where the budget comes from.
As long as it's...
I want better policing.
And there are people like that. I think for Surrey residents, and this is not just policing in Surrey, it's Surrey overall, the funding formula means that Surrey is arguably penalised for being comparatively wealthy. And that's a problem for a lot of constituents. And what it means is that when we're asked by the Home Office to pay for things that we don't necessarily think is a best use of money, Surrey residents are still having to pay over and above our neighbouring forces. And for, you know, there are parts of the country where 60% of policing is paid for by the Home Office.
But I would be more interested in knowing, does central government pay per capita for policing?
No.
How do they decide?
Well, that's where you get into the economics of the funding formula.
Yes.
And Angela Rayner, while she was still in post, launched a new sort of review into it. And unsurprisingly, because it's a Labour government, places like Surrey and sort of traditionally conservative, if you like, home counties are definitely going to lose out. And we think that Surrey County Council will lose out by about £50 million a year under Angela Rayner's sort of
So it is politicised.
Oh, it's massively politicised. Oh yeah, it's enormously politicised, massively. So what it means is when council tax comes around each year, so that budget that Surrey Police have, we get told, right, this is how much you're getting for the coming financial year from the Treasury, from the Home Office. But that's with the expectation that I raise council tax by the maximum amount that I am allowed to, the government tells me I can.
So you can raise council tax?
Yes.
As well as a mayor can?
So separate. We don't have a mayor in Surrey yet.
Oh, okay.
So as Police and Crime Commissioner, I'm the person with responsibility in Surrey for raising council tax to fund policing.
So everything you raise it by goes purely to policing?
Purely to policing.
I like that though.
Yeah.
I look, our council's
I like it too, because I think it's and that is why I think the role of PCC is really important, because if the public look at me and go, okay, you've raised again our council tax by the maximum amount. So last year was £14 on a band D, which is an average property. We don't think you spent it properly. We think crime is going up. We don't feel as safe. We think you spent it badly. We're not going to vote you in next time.
Yeah,
that's a direct consequence. And so that would be part of my argument in favour of PCCs. You've got somebody you can hold responsible, as opposed to a police authority who also had that. But who do you hold responsible for it on the police authority?
So will Tizard in Bedfordshire be able to do the same?
Absolutely.
Add something to it. So again, I like that. I'm interested. I tell you why I like that, because our village is having a conversation at the moment about bringing in someone like, is it Blue Line or one of these private security initiatives to come in and just provide security around the village because people are concerned and worried for their safety and fed up with the crime. But we would rather it's provided by the police.
Of course.
And so if the PCC came out and said, I want to raise it by X, it's probably going to be lower than what I would be spending because it would be aggregated across the whole of the county. Okay, that's
where
interesting.
It then comes down to it, and you asked about sort of the chief constable, is it's up to me to, because the PCC owns the budget and the estate and all of the assets and every contract and all of that. So I could say, let's say Godalming, which is a lovely, lovely town in Surrey, very safe, but not without problems because nowhere is. Let's say the people of Godalming say, right, yes, I am happy to pay an extra £14 a year on my Band D property because that's what the PCC is asking for. And we like her police and crime plan. We like the fact that she's put more police officers, she's paying for more police officers. And we have more officers in Surrey than Surrey's ever had, thanks to Uplift. But it's down to the chief constable as to where he chooses to put those officers. That's not down to the police and crime commissioner.
Okay.
That is very specifically an operational matter that is reserved entirely for the chief constable.
And that's great because if they understand what's happening.
That's it.
See, it's interesting because our council's broke, like most councils. We're on the edge of a Section 114.
Okay.
And so
Surrey is famously broke. I mean, we've got Woking, Spelthorne, and Runnymede, all of which are in the top 5 of the most broke councils in the country.
Well, it's clearly so when people are frustrated with the council or at being broke, my point is that this is happening up and down the country. Mm-hmm. The statutory demands have increased, but the funding has been cut. You get the business rates reset as well. There's this intense pressure on the councils, and it's no wonder they're running out of money. No. There's no wonder they've got no money for public services. I mean, the cuts we're facing at the moment is they're cutting free parking in the town centre. They're cutting the discretionary spend that councils have to do certain projects.
I suspect bus services for schools.
I haven't heard about that just yet.
Yeah, but we're seeing that in Surrey.
There's regular updates every week that this is being cut, that's being cut. And look, the mayor had tried to do some ambitious projects. There was a town centre redevelopment, and he bought some property to do that, and now he's facing these challenges that basically he shouldn't have really done it because the money wasn't there. And we've got this issue that needs addressing in that the central government, which is running out of money, is offloading too much pressure onto the councils who have no money. And even if he does the 5% rise in the council tax, it's not going to make a difference. Actually, they're cutting the so the poorest people in the town who receive relief from council tax, they're probably going to have that removed as well. And so we're actually attacking the poorest people with this. I mean, it's the whole thing. The whole thing, Lisa, is a mess.
It does. And you've got, I mean, Surrey is no different. You've got our councils that are in particular amounts of debt, and that's one of the reasons why Surrey is going through local government reform at the moment. And you've got the county council, which is, and this will be no different from Bedfordshire, where adult social care, right, is costing through the roof. And we know what's happening. We know all about demographics, and we know about the aging population, and that we're going to have 9 million people over the age of 70 and not that long.
But we have introduced legislation. We can start killing them now.
Don't think we're quite there yet.
Well, it's going to go through the House of Lords.
It's got to go through the Lords. So we've got that time bomb.
Yes.
Right. Along with our sort of family and education piece, and SEND in particular, especially educational needs, which we're also seeing, as a massive time bomb. And county councils in particular, where you've got a county council, are having to pick all of that up. And that can't
Emergency
be housing.
Yep.
All of this.
At a time where people are losing their jobs, businesses are closing, the economy is stagnant.
The nighttime economy in particular, as you'll know from Bedford.
I own a bar.
You own a bar. Yeah.
Yes, and we have halved in 2 years.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 bars have closed down. People aren't going out. They've even got disposable income. Look, every direction, this is
the
bad.
Squeeze is coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
And local residents are really struggling, and local businesses are struggling. And I find it really interesting. I've been having this debate with Labour and the Lib Dems for 20 odd years. When they sort of talk about the local community and they talk about businesses, and it's like, it's the same. Why do we talk about them as though they're 2 separate cohorts? They are the same people. Who do you think are running your businesses and employing people locally?
Mm-hmm. Well, so look, I think we're on very similar pages here. This is interesting. So when you talk about the plan, what does the plan mean?
Yeah.
And do you write that in cooperation with the chief constable?
So
chief inspector. Do I keep
chief
interchanging
constable.
them? Yes.
Chief constable.
Yes.
Chief inspector is
Yes.
a lower rank. So the chief constable, in consultation with, is probably fair, but ultimately it has to be my plan. I'm the person who's elected, I suppose.
And sorry, one question on that.
Yeah.
Does anything come down from the party that says we think you should be? So it's purely independent.
It's purely independent. There are suggestions, and this is one of the things. Different Home Secretaries have different priorities. I mean, I remember a few years ago when Suella was Home Secretary and Kit Malthouse was Policing Minister. The big theme was bringing down homicide, for example. I think Surrey was at the time the force with the second lowest homicide rate in the country. And so it was never going to be...
We're talking like 4 people a year killed.
We're talking very low numbers. Yeah, we're talking very, very low numbers. So for example, they wanted all the measures focused on reducing homicide, quite rightly.
Yeah.
They weren't wrong. But for example, for Surrey, that was never going to be leading in my police and crime plan because our numbers were comparatively very, very low and tended to be domestic homicide.
Yes.
And the way you deal with that is obviously slightly different. So different Home Secretaries in different governments will have different priorities, but it really is up to you as Police and Crime Commissioner. And we are elected to an extent on manifestos, the same as all politicians are. And mine was really around back to basics policing, by which I mean police officers getting back to doing what only police officers can do, i.e. not recording non-crime hate incidents.
Can you tell them to not do that?
I can say to the Chief Constable, these are the things I want you to prioritise, and therefore the funding that I'm making available to the police force is sort of loosely on the understanding that these are the things, because these are the things that Surrey Public are telling me they want prioritised. And also as the person who hires or appoints the Chief Constable, you are obviously looking to appoint somebody who believes in sort of your model of what the police should be doing. And
the police have a choice in that when somebody hit the back of my car, I reported it, nothing was done. So they made a choice to do nothing.
Yep.
And a lot of people have complained that they've stopped reporting crime because nothing happens because the police having to make a choice.
Yeah.
And
that's operational independence.
Yeah. When we see on Twitter the police knocking at somebody's door because they said some Hurty words on Twitter, I think there's like a frustration. But you have the ability to say to the Chief Constable, I would rather you didn't focus on it. I'd rather you focus on...
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Chief Constable can say, well, PCC, I don't agree with you, Commissioner. I think you're wrong and I am going to focus on this. And that is when you would get into dispute with your Chief Constable.
Okay, so when you develop your plan, how did you come to your plan? How do you make a decision what you want them to focus on?
So my second plan was easier than my first because my second was done with 3 years of experience and a lot of talking to police officers, a lot of talking to everything from local councillors to our domestic abuse charities, bereavement charities, drug and alcohol misuse, the health sector, mental health, which is a huge thing within policing, and of course, most importantly, constituents. What do they want? What are they saying? I attend residents' meetings every week. So my second plan was based partly on these are the things that are coming up and I think what people want and what I think is doable and deliverable. And then consultation. So two waves of consultation. One which was with partners, and that's everybody from domestic abuse charities and commissioned charities and the NHS and schools. We did a huge amount of consultation with schools to say, what do you want in the police and crime plan? And then we took that basket of things that came out and went out to the Surrey public and said, right, this is what's come up. What are your priorities within this? Is there something we've missed? And then all of that combined sort of led to the police and crime plan.
And what was the summary of your plan, if you had to explain it
so
in an elevator?
So it's prioritising back to basics policing, which is really important. For me, Surrey Police living within its means as a Conservative, it's public money. This is public money that we are spending. Every pound that we spend could have been spent Government could have chosen to spend it somewhere else, right? They could have spent it on cancer care. They could have spent it on education. They could have spent it on making sure that your grandmother gets the best care possible in the NHS. The government have said, no, that pound is going towards policing. So we have a duty. And I know the Chief Constable, who talks about this very eloquently in Surrey, the Chief Constable feels that very, very strongly. And that was an important part of his pitch to become Chief Constable. So that's really, really important part of my plan. So are we spending taxpayers' money sensibly, particularly in a county where they're paying more than others are?
But even that respecting that it's public money is something which we don't hear enough.
We should hear.
It's very Thatcherite. Yeah.
Gosh.
But it is because
she
was always very clear that the government has no money. We only have your money.
Yeah, it's not our money.
Yeah, but that doesn't come from the Labour Party at the moment.
No,
they
it
act
doesn't.
like
No, it doesn't.
Like our money is their money,
and it doesn't come from policing. It's not just the Labour Party. It doesn't come from the public sector, I don't think. And I do find myself having to remind people within policing, and it's very odd being a Conservative politician working very firmly within a public sector body in a way. It's really interesting. I do find myself on a daily basis at times having to remind people, particularly as we're coming up to budgeting, discussing budgeting, this is not our money. This is public money. And we talk about massive contracts in policing. You know, we're talking about a contract at the moment for rebuilding HQ. We're talking tens of millions of pounds. It's not our money.
Do you need a new HQ?
We need to our current HQ is falling apart, unfortunately, and therefore it's costing us or costing the public a lot of money because it's falling apart. But every pound that we spend is public money. So that's a really important part of my plan. Preventing violence against women and girls, women and children particularly, is a really, really, because people were telling us that is really, really important to them.
Yeah.
And
which is a growing problem, by the way, in Bedford as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a growing problem everywhere. And part of that is because part of that is a good thing, and it's because we're seeing reporting going up. We know there are a number of crimes which we know are massively underreported. And domestic abuse, domestic violence, violence against women and children is one of them. So I was very clear when I was first elected to my police and crime panel, who was slightly shocked when I said it to them. They said, oh, well, you know, you'll want to see domestic abuse reports come down. Absolutely not. I want to see domestic abuse reports go up, because we know it's not being reported. So I want to see the reports go up, because we can't deal with a problem. This is true of everything, right? It's the same in the NHS, it's the same in policing. We can't deal with it if we don't know about it. Yeah. So please, please, please report. So the one thing I'm constantly telling my residents and residents group is report. I understand, because you do get, you've just highlighted it beautifully, that vicious cycle where people don't report it because they think the police won't do anything. So the police don't do anything because they don't know about it. And you get into a vicious circle there. And we saw that with shoplifting.
Well, this is what the police keep saying in Bedford, the shop owners, I mean, even myself, I feel like I've been the victim of crime at least once a month in the last year.
Yeah.
Owning multiple businesses, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But personally as well, I very rarely report it. One, it takes a lot of time, and two, nothing will happen. And the police keep telling owners of the business, everyone, to keep reporting this.
Yeah.
The problem is
vital.
When you start reporting it, you see, I mean, the sheer volume of things that people are experiencing at the moment is high.
Because we can't, so we can't police by anecdote.
Yes.
We can't police because, a nice road somewhere in, Farnham or Godalming or Shepperton says we're experiencing a spike in burglary. Okay, where are the reports?
Yeah.
Show us where it's happening, and that'll allow us to build a picture of what sort of time is it happening. Are there particular people who are targeting these homes? Right, because we can police that. So I'm constantly saying to people, report, because if nothing else, yes, we'll get and no PCC and certainly no Chief Constable wants to see a spike in any particular kind of crime. But when we see that, we can and we'll tackle it, but also we have to, because there's a little bit of name and shame here. And in Surrey, I remember a few years ago in Surrey, it was front page, and it had Surrey, it was around shoplifting. It was when the shoplifting spike started with cost of living crisis, and they had Surrey as the county with the lowest, or the police force with the lowest reported shoplifting. And some people in the county were patting themselves on the back and going, oh, well done us. Utter crap, right? Absolute gold-plated bollocks were we experiencing the lowest shoplifting in the country. shop owners weren't reporting it, and they weren't reporting it because they didn't think that the police would do anything about it if they did.
But it's been normalised as well now.
And it became normalised. Yeah. And now what we've seen shoplifting rise. We actually saw earlier on, and it's now come down, we saw nearly a 30% rise in shoplifting in Surrey. And that was because it was being reported.
Yeah. Is it 2.2 billion a year now?
Yeah.
Shoplifting. But what's really interesting is I've been looking into why the shops don't deal with it. They actually just look at the percent of sales, they raise the prices. So shoplifting is now a tax on the consumer.
Yeah. But certainly for larger stores. And I visited Boots in Nottingham recently. I went to their security.
Where in Nottingham?
So they have a massive Boots have a whole village basically just outside of Nottingham, where their headquarters is. And I went to visit their security CCTV centre and everything, because Boots is a high street name that we all know, and they are targeted for shoplifting.
Yeah.
And I was really interested to see how they were doing it. And they got in touch to say, come and have a look and see what we're doing. And they're doing some really interesting, innovative things actually around it. But one of my concerns that I put to them was, I'm not seeing your store. I speak to your store managers, and your store managers will sort of say, yeah, well, we're not really incentivized to report it. And they showed me some of the CCTV stuff and with some really, they are doing some genuinely innovative and interesting work. But I watched one where these two guys had gone into a Boots store, not in Surrey, had cleared a load of expensive products off a shelf and walked out. And this was all caught on security body cam. And I said, well, at what point were they stopped? Oh, they weren't. Well, then where's the disincentive? Why wouldn't they just come back and do it again?
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with CASA.
Well, but haven't we decriminalised under £200 as well?
No. And
is that a myth?
That is such a myth.
Why
if I get nothing else out of my conversation with you today, it is to dispel this myth.
So where's that come from?
Don't know. And that's a really good question. I've spent a few years trying to find out where that myth came from. And it is a myth. I was in a Sainsbury's in Red Hill, which is near Reigate.
I know Red Hill.
Yeah.
My auntie used to live there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big Sainsbury's in Red Hill. I was there on attachment with the force. And we were talking to some Sainsbury's there they employ security to support them. Somebody came in, was seen taking, I think it worked out about £7.50 worth of goods. I think it was not Red Bull, it was Pimm's, which might be the most Surrey crime ever. And was stopped and put through the system. He was looked up on the system, and because he was recently released from prison on licence, he was sent straight back. He was arrested, taken into custody, and went straight back to prison.
For £7.50?
Yeah. So
okay, that's interesting.
So the £200 is an absolute myth.
Well, I'm glad that is a myth. I don't know why the security guards aren't stopping people. I'm sure some stores would rather it be a tax on the shopper than have an incident which maybe leads to security guard being stabbed. What I'm told by sort of stores is that, well, we don't want to put our security guards at risk. Or we don't have anybody, so we could stop them, because of course they can. We could stop them and we could detain them, but we don't have anywhere in store we can detain them. And then we don't know how long it'll take the police to come. But again, you get into this vicious circle of, okay, so where's the deterrent then? So what's to stop somebody if they've been in, stolen £500 worth of products from a Boots shelf and walked out and not been stopped? What's to stop them doing it again next week or tomorrow? Well, there's endless videos on Twitter of people going to Greggs and just picking up a drink and a sandwich, walking out, going into Tesco's and stealing alcohol. And I almost question, why even have security? What is their job apart from that? Well, that's, because they're clearly not a sufficient deterrent. But the weird thing is the remodeling of stores now, our local Tesco's have got the big perspex. Is it perspex? Whatever. They're almost like prison cells for the people at the checkout counter.
Oh, yes.
To protect them. Little Sainsbury's.
What started as COVID and has sort of since become,
security.
Yeah.
And we've actually seen people like even rip them down to get behind them to steal the cigarettes. Yeah. We've seen in our local, there's a Sainsbury's near us. If you take a steak off the shelf, there's a big beep that goes off to let them know that someone's picked a steak off the shelf. And it's like, what we're doing is we're putting in alerts and systems, but we're not actually dealing with the root cause, which is saying this is unacceptable. And it's quite depressing.
It is, and it's frustrating when I speak to security staff in stores, and I say to them, I pointed out to one recently, one of my local stores, I've just watched somebody put a bottle of whiskey and just walk out with it. Did you? Oh yeah, I saw. Why didn't you? I'm not allowed to put hands on. I can't legally put hands on. Yes, you can.
Yeah, well, that's weird because
they can legally put hands on, of course.
Well,
they can legally detain.
My security staff in my bar can put hands on people if they are fighting.
You can.
I choose not to.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for that.
But we all have statutory powers.
And that's why you employ security staff, is to put, if necessary, hands on and for them to take that judgment.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
I imagine, like I say, the Tesco's and Sainsbury's are happy with it being a tax on consumers and don't want to face the backlash of somebody maybe stabbing a security guard.
And that's a choice, but we need to be honest about that choice that is being taken. And that's my challenge to those stores is if you are saying, no, our security people are not going to challenge, be honest that that's a decision and a choice you're taking. About it, and that means as consumers we are all paying more.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. When you talked about the rise of shoplifting, and you said alongside the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
And so one of the things really interesting is actually even beyond that is middle class shoplifting that's going on at the moment. So
I've seen that
in our cafe. We have nice cutlery in these nice little milk jugs.
Lovely.
People are stealing them. They're coming and having a coffee and thinking, I just want that.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm taking it. They're not feeding a drug habit.
No.
They're not trying to steal nappies because they've got no money to for their baby. And my friend, she's got a clothes store. She said all the time, people are just coming in and stealing things. And they are, you look at them, these are what you think respectable middle class people.
We've seen it in Surrey, certainly. You speak to certain stores. I mean, Space NK is one, which is very nice cosmetics store, and various branches of that. When I've spoken to managers there, they're quite open about the fact that the kind of shoppers who come in and use it, I'll be honest, people like me, right, middle class women in our mid-40s.
But are they
who will go in?
Is it for a rush?
It's not because they need it, right? So we're not talking, like you say, we're not talking about a product that somebody needs. Nobody needs a new retinol.
Okay, fair.
It's not a product they need. It's almost certainly a product they can afford. So why are they doing it? And that's a really good question. I don't have the answer to that. I wish I knew what is making them do it.
Because imagine being caught in the shame.
Oh, I mean, I don't understand what leads somebody to do that in the first place. Other than out of need. So why would you do it, and why would you put yourself through, like you say, the shame of it? You
can understand a heroin addict, all they care about is my next fix. I'm going to go into, I don't know, I was going to say Debenhams, we don't have them anymore. I'm going to go into Next and I'm going to steal, I don't know,
pair of jeans,
and then I'm going to for £5 and I can buy get a hit. Like, I understand.
Or somebody who can't feed their family and is saying, I need to be able to buy food for my baby.
Yeah.
You can understand it.
You can justify that. But and even youngsters, I get why youngsters, I nicked a couple of things as a kid.
Okay.
Some sweets from Woolworths. But again, I can understand that. I just don't understand where this middle class crime wave has come from.
Yeah.
And perhaps maybe we've squeezed the middle class more than we thought we have.
I don't know. I don't think it is that.
Then it must be for a rush.
Yeah, well then that's it, and that's the bit I don't understand. I don't get that rush. I've never shoplifted in my life. I don't understand it. But certainly the shoplifting and sort of say cost of living crisis is a really, really lazy shorthand, because actually what we're seeing increasingly with a lot of our shoplifting, and particularly our high value shoplifting, isn't somebody feeding a heroin habit. Certainly not in Surrey. It's not necessarily somebody doing that. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It does. But it's stealing to order. It's organised criminal gangs.
Organised crime, yeah.
Yeah, it's organised crime. And that's where we've seen the real increase, are people targeting, like you said, targeting meat, targeting alcohol, targeting...
Chocolate, I was told.
Chocolate?
Yes,
okay.
That's what they said in the Sainsbury's. They'll come in and steal £1,000 of chocolate. And I said, why? They said there's a secondary market on Facebook where people are going to say, I've got a bag of chocolate here, £50 of chocolate. You can have it for £20, and people are going, I'll take that. I'll pay for that.
Yeah,
because
and again, I'd argue those people who are paying for that are complicit.
Of course, they're complicit. Of course,
because you know that what you're getting is not. It's the old sort of Del Boy. It fell off the back of a truck. Right?
Yeah, but that complicity can go through a lot of things that people don't always. I mean, I was talking to I got a friend who works at the Met. I was talking about. He said the biggest problem they face with drugs crime is the complicity of middle-class people doing cocaine and not realising the impact.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that drives me. I've such a nerd. That's probably a reason I became a police and crime commissioner. I've never taken an illegal drug in my life. I have no interest in it. It's just never interested me.
I've taken a lot. I can fill you in.
There you go. You can fill me in. And this is a good balance. This is an important balance. So I don't understand it. But this naivety or willful naivety that doing a line of coke at the weekend with your sort of mates when the kids have gone to school, the kids have gone to bed, is somehow not contributing to the county lines problem that we see that's really damaging to our communities is so negligent.
Well, it's my old life. I haven't done drugs for nearly 15 years, but I used to work in London, work in advertising, so it was a cliche.
It was there.
It was a cliche. But what it is, if you don't understand it, do you like a glass of wine?
I certainly do.
Okay, you like a glass of wine. Some people like a line of Coke. That's what the difference is. And what happens is you don't spend time thinking about it. You don't rationalize it.
Yeah.
You might go to a car park somewhere or park up by a park and meet some guy you don't know who says he's going to be there in 15 minutes, takes an hour, and you don't, and you kind of have a good relationship with them. You talk to them, you make a joke with them. You don't connect the dots all the way through to what really is happening, which is a massive increase of guns coming into the country, kids being forced.
I was going to say a 10-year-old who's being forced to sort of take part in a county line where where they're being, there's a modern slavery element, where they are being threatened with the worst kind of violence.
Yeah, probably.
It's all part of the same. Yeah.
But I don't think we've had that public conversation enough about that.
No, I agree.
We haven't had that because. I mean, like as my friend said at the police, he said this is one of the major issues, and it's leading to more drugs, more violence, more guns coming into the country. Yeah. And his belief is that's the biggest problem. He said, all drugs are a problem. Yeah, weed not so much.
I agree. There's a scale.
But there's a scale. But he said, because the thing is about cocaine, because it's taken by middle-class people, they'll spend 60, 70, 80 pound on a gram. They'll maybe buy 5 grams, and that's a good business. Yeah. And they're not accepting the consequences of what they're doing. Absolutely. And there's like a hypocrisy from complaining about crime and then contributing to it.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. There's a massive hypocrisy around it. And as you've said on a number of issues, a lack of education around it. Yep. And people not understanding. And those of us who are in a position to do so, who are elected quite literally to do so, need to be better at explaining that and having, comes back to that point earlier, honest conversations with the public about what makes a difference. We talk about visible policing a lot. We talk about the importance of visible policing. Everybody wants a Bobby on the beat. Mm-hmm. The reality is that the Bobby on the beat is not dealing with the worst crimes that are happening in our communities. They're not able to. They are not dealing with... So we've seen obviously a reduction. We all know about the reduction in violent crime over the decades. Certainly true in Surrey and everywhere else. We have seen over the decades a trend where we've had a reduction in violent crime, we've had a reduction in burglary, offences against the person, all of these kind of crimes. We have seen a massive increase in fraud, computer misuse, those kind of things. We know that domestic abuse is a real problem within our communities. The Bobby on the beat isn't doing anything to deal with those crimes, the crimes that are happening to the most vulnerable, that are happening to, your elderly mother or grandmother in her home who is being scammed on the phone or is being scammed through the computer, who is helping the woman and her children who are being abused by her coercive, controlling partner. Okay, so is that a case of resources have been realigned to deal with those, and therefore you may be seeing less bobbies on the beat because there's less of a need? There's an element of that, and I think again that policing is kind of hidden. Then, yeah, it is, because crime is hidden. So we've gone from a position, quite rightly, in the UK where police were there, the contract, if you like, that sort of policing by consent, which is so vital in the UK, so important to our policing system, has gone from dealing with crimes in the public sphere, so dealing with your sort of nighttime economy, your brawl outside a pub, to dealing with things like burglary, those kind of things, public order, violence against the person, all of those kind of things, which happened very much in public, to dealing increasingly with crimes that were happening behind closed doors, which was a place originally where police didn't go. It's not that long ago, within our lifetime, and you and I are about the same age, where it wasn't, raping your wife wasn't a crime, right? That was only, 91 that became a crime? So well within our lifetimes. Yeah, well within our lifetimes. I didn't know that. Yeah. So Jesus Christ. I think you're 1978. I am. Yes, I'm January 1980. So you and I are in that sort of zennial, I think we're called. We're on the cusp. We're on the cusp. We had an entirely analog childhood, but an entirely digital adults, right? Yeah. So these things are very much within our lifetimes. So, and there was very much a thing where police didn't, they didn't have a man and his, his castle, and you didn't go in, and that was domestic, and you didn't go in there, and that was between a man and his wife, and obviously policing, quite rightly, is now going into these spaces to protect the vulnerable, protect the children, protect the woman or man who may be experiencing abuse. And obviously we've had the rise of the internet, obviously in our lifetimes, where it has enabled crime to take place from anywhere to anywhere. Yes. And so policing obviously has had to change. And so the Bobby on the beat is no longer the front line against all crimes, and particularly not the most, the crimes that are harming the most vulnerable. He or she, your Bobby on the beat, is not now your front line in so many cases. And police officers and police staff need to be increasingly more comfortable on, I'd say, the digital beat, or at least as comfortable on the digital beat as they are on the physical beat and walking down your high street in Farnham or Guildford or Woking or Redhill. Is that different police officers or police officers trained in a wider, broader? It's a bit of both. Okay. It's a little bit of both. You've got your neighbourhood officers who will be doing both. They will be both and should be both patrolling your high streets. Our PCSOs are phenomenal. Certainly in Surrey, we've got the most brilliant people as PCSOs, who of course are police staff, but they are the ones who are really on the front line when it comes to things like shoplifting and preventing shoplifting and taking reports, and making sure they're fed through, and our PCs are doing all of that as well. But that same PCSO or PC may well be spending their afternoon back at the station, speaking to victims of coercive and controlling behaviour, about the financial abuse that they're facing. Or speaking to somebody who's been a victim of romance fraud. Yeah. Which is massive, huge problem in Surrey. Massive. Yeah. Found that out recently. Absolutely. It's a huge problem. So they're doing both. You also then will have economic crime teams whose jobs are purely to do that, and can do brilliant things that, I'd be honest, I couldn't do, don't understand. And whose job is to sort of delve into the kind of, the bank statements and the bank accounts and look for that paper trail And you will have police officers whose job is to, our roads policing officers, another phenomenal group, whose job is to basically police our roads 24/7. And, Surrey is particularly vulnerable because we have that stretch of the M25 that is the busiest and most dangerous stretch of highway in Europe. And, to go back to your point about drugs, we are now finding there's more drug driving than drink driving in Surrey.
Okay, interesting. Because people feel like it's easier to get away with?
I think there's an extent that people think that. Of course, there's no limit. There's no amount of drugs in your system that's acceptable. But
can they roadside test?
Yes. Yes, we can. Yeah. There are swabs for all of the, most prolific drugs. They can be roadside tested, and then you could be taken to a station, obviously, and have blood tests done. And exactly the same as with alcohol. No different.
So drugs is an interesting one. So I grew up quite liberal with drugs. I smoked a lot of weed as a kid, and then I've had my experience with cocaine, which I've been very honest about.
Yeah.
I was actually an addict, and I had to go through a process of coming off it. 15 years clean. But I used to be so the libertarian in me feels like any adult should be able to make a decision that they want.
Yeah.
And I'm also I feel like prohibition just doesn't work.
I agree.
But at the same time, I'm seeing the devastating effects of drugs within our local community, which is quite severe. And what I haven't come to, so chatting to my friend at the Met, I chat to him regularly, I pick his brain. He said prohibition is whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
He said we're dealing with Albanian gangs, Turkish gangs, Iranian
Chilean.
gangs. Chile. I didn't know Chilean now.
Big one in Surrey.
Right. Okay. And prohibition has essentially created a market, but it's a market that's ultra violent, ultra dangerous, and every single time they arrest somebody, someone steps in their place.
Yeah.
They can never end it. He privately has said to me, it's time to reconsider prohibition. Now, it's a hot, difficult subject for people to even think about the idea that we would, even marijuana is difficult for people to accept.
Yeah.
And I go up to the US a lot, pretty much almost every state has either decriminalized or legalized it.
Yeah, states like Colorado doing really interesting things, I think.
They are. There is a downside. The entirety of New York smells of weed.
Yeah.
And
you hear that. That's one of the things. That's one of the criticisms.
Yeah. So maybe they can engineer the smell away. And similar, we were just I got back from Las Vegas a couple of days ago again. But marijuana is not a drug most people worry about too much. Yes, there's a criminal side to it. I think the big worry is cocaine, heroin, crack.
Yeah.
What's your honest, open view on this as an issue?
Yeah. This is one of the areas where I get into trouble for being honest. And I'm going to depart from a lot of my conservative PCC colleagues on this. I'm not a libertarian. I've said that I'm very much a one nation conservative, but there are certain issues, and drugs is one of them, where it seems pretty bloody obvious to me that we've been doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And that cannot be intelligent or sensible. And I'm not remotely ideal. One of the reasons I'm a one nation conservative is because I don't buy into sort of this ideology and treating sort of various sort of political views as religion. I'm a Roman Catholic. I get the religion bit. I just don't think that and politics have any place together. And so as somebody who I would consider myself a pragmatist, it's just the bloody obvious. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Prohibition, as we have designed it, does not work.
So on this podcast, you are definitely hearing me talk about Bitcoin a lot. Well, why? We live in a really strange time with governments driving inflation with their reckless spending and endless money printing. There is a way out of this. There is a way to protect your money, and that is by stacking Bitcoin. I've made loads of shows about Bitcoin. You can go and research this. You can go and read the books. But the truth is, it is the hardest money ever created. If you are interested in protecting your financial future, it's time for you to get on the Bitcoin train. I've been stacking Bitcoin personally and through my businesses since 2017. It's protected me, it's secured my family's future, and it also strengthens all of my businesses. So if you want to start stacking Bitcoin, where do you do it? Well, for me, it's with Gemini. They're a fully licensed, full reserve exchange and custodian. So they give you a secure way for you to buy and own your Bitcoin. There's no risks and no funny business. So if you're serious about stacking Bitcoin the right way, head over to Gemini.com, which is GEMINI.com. Well, Prohibition always creates a black or grey market.
Of course it does.
And it's always run by the most dangerous, violent people.
Yeah. And I grew up, I mean, I'm very different to you in the sense that I never tried any illegal drug. Part of that is I'm type 1 diabetic. I'm diabetic since I was 9, and I was told very, very early on, don't do anything that would mess with that. And so I had my first alcoholic drink at 18, right? My 18th birthday. I'm that geek. So I was always very risk averse in that sense. But my parents were always when I was growing up, they were very much, I was getting, so at school in the early 90s, right? It was all don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
We remember the adverts.
Leah Betts.
Yeah, Leah Betts,
Yeah.
absolutely. We all remember those pictures in the newspapers. And it was don't do drugs, kids. And, I'd come home and talk to my parents about it.
Zammo.
Oh, Zammo.
The death of Zammo.
The death of Zammo, yeah. Just, those adverts, the sort of say no to drugs.
But they were effective at scaring people off
they
drugs.
were.
Yeah.
They were. They absolutely were. And I'm not arguing against their effectiveness. But I would come home and talk to my parents about it and sort of, because the thing I couldn't quite get in my, then why, given all of these things, given how awful it is, why are people doing it? Right? If it's so awful, why do people still do it?
Yeah.
And
because it's fun.
Well, this was it. And so this was my parents.
Yeah.
And they would say, because it's fun.
It's fun.
There is a reason. Don't do drugs, but you have to understand why people do. In order to understand it, and it was very much, your father and I, smoked weed and whatever. And it is fun up to a point. And there is a reason why people do it, but there's a really good reason also why you shouldn't do it.
But there's also an education piece, like the Leah Betts thing.
Yeah.
We were told she died from taking ecstasy.
It was the water.
It was the water.
It was the water.
Yeah, it was the water. And also, I mean, I'm glad I don't do cocaine anymore because, especially,
I'm glad you don't do cocaine anymore.
But I had some fun doing it. I'm not going to lie. But it's actually, there's been a lot of deaths in the US because they're cutting fentanyl into it now. And when I used to go raving, we used to get kits to test our little pills just to make sure there's nothing cut in it. And so again, as a libertarian, I hate regulation, but at the same time, it's an unregulated market. I just think in Bedford, I just found out there's been a spate of illnesses and deaths because of a bad batch of heroin.
Yeah.
Which is, again, people are cutting things. They don't give a shit.
Fentanyl is terrifying. I mean, you look at what's happening in the US.
Yes.
And it's absolutely terrifying. And we're seeing an element of it here.
It's starting to happen here.
Way, but it is happening here. And we are going to have to do something differently to get it right. And that cannot be just straightforward prohibition. It can't be. It doesn't work. I think you're right. Marijuana is a different drug. Marijuana, the other thing we've got to be honest about is marijuana, as is being smoked now, is not the drug it was in the 60s and 70s.
It's a lot stronger.
It's a lot stronger, right? And we have to be honest about that as well. And we have to be honest about the medicinal uses that are available and how do we make the best use of that? How do we? I'd tax it. I'd regulate it and tax it. But I'd do the same with prostitution. I'd do the same with other.
Oh, here we go. Right. Okay. So, so this is interesting. But I
say I'm not a libertarian, but there are things where I just think the markets have a really important role to play.
Markets are efficient. Okay. So this is interesting. I'll come back to prostitution. So on the drug scene, I don't know if you've seen the problems that's happening in California where they've now overtaxed it and then they're now growing it illegally and there's illegal markets for it, which is a problem.
That's a problem.
But I think the bigger point is at least we're having the conversation. An independent podcast can meet a very independent thinking conservative PCC and have an open conversation, and other people are going to hear this and they're going to have their opinions.
They'll have their view. Yeah.
They're going to have their view. But these were topics which were kind of people shy away from previously or banned topics. But the drugs thing is not working. We have drug gangs operating up and down the country. We have county lines, which we know is an awful issue, but we have Middle Eastern gangs, we have Eastern European gangs. And like I say, the amount of guns coming into the country is terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
So let's have a conversation. If you destroy this market by making it legal, then you're going to remove a lot of criminality, which means the police can target other things. And I guess what you're saying is I would tax it and use the taxation towards the downstream problems that will come from addiction.
Yeah.
Yes.
I absolutely would.
Yeah.
And I think that the first step in that is having the conversation about it. I mean, one of the conversations that's been happening in recent months, and is an ongoing conversation, is should we reclassify cannabis as Class A? Which is a conversation that is being had very, very seriously, certainly amongst police and crime commissioners and others. And I know I'm an outlier for, certainly within my own cohort, for saying no.
But is that because they want to, is that it's not to do with the effects of somebody smoking cannabis, it's more to do with who is dealing with it and being able to punish them harder?
I think there's an element of that. There's an element of all drugs bad. But we have to be able to say some harms are worse than others.
Yeah.
And without dismissing the very real harms, particularly of, as we were saying, you know, cannabis is not the same as it was in the 60s and 70s. We're dealing with a very, very different thing. But then we can't really get to grips with that if we're not dealing with it in a regulated way. So, issues around psychosis, and I've spent a lot of time both in Parliament and as a PCC dealing with mental health. And researching and policy around it, and there's no doubt in my mind from everything that I've read that there is definitely a link between cannabis use and poor mental health, but a lot of that comes from the kind of cannabis that's out in the system at the moment. But to suggest, it seems to me nonsensical to suggest that cannabis should be in the same category as heroin or crack cocaine.
Agreed.
That just seems to me madness. And I've not spoken to a single police officer privately who thinks that is sensible. And then you get into the idea, okay, well, let's say we do accept that all drugs are equally bad, and therefore we make them all Class A. Who thinks we're going to be able to police that on current resources?
And it's not going to change. Nobody's going to say, well, they've made it Class A, I'm going to start smoking weed now.
Well, this is it. Yeah. So, and we know that from a county lines point of view, organised criminal gangs point of view, that, and we're certainly seeing it locally, that it's not just cocaine and heroin. It is increasingly cannabis that's being dealt as well, and that is becoming part of it. And it seems to me that, okay, but the idea that the way of cracking that, dealing with it, is not to make everything Class A.
Are there other sympathetic voices that you don't have to name names, but within the police or other PCCs who share a similar view, or are you a total outlier?
I think there are privately sympathetic voices of people who will get in touch and go, by the way, what you said in that meeting, I agree with you. I'm not going to say it publicly, but I agree with you. And that's interesting. I think it was very interesting. There was one of my counsellors had posted something on Facebook a while ago about this conversation specifically around reclassifying cannabis as Class A, and had put his own views on Facebook and said, look, I may be out of touch here with my constituents, but my view is this. And what was really interesting, and he's in what I would say quite a bellwether bit of Surrey, and I looked at his Facebook, and because he'd said to me, you might find this interesting given your views, and the comments were overwhelmingly, why are we worrying about cannabis when we have all of these other problems? And it is really interesting because it does come back down every time to the smell.
They're coming for us.
They're coming for us. It's the thought police. And it does come back down to the smell, which I think is really interesting. That's what people don't like. They don't like the open dealing, and they don't like the smell of it. They don't necessarily have a problem with the person who in their own home wants to light up.
And why would they? I mean,
why would they? Because what is the job of the state? is what it comes back down. But isn't that what it comes back down to? What is the job of the state? And the police, I feel very strongly about this. Police is the most visible element of the state at its most, at its most draconian, I suppose, arguably.
Well, this wraps everything we've spoken about the politician, the electorate. I think we also need an honest conversation about the role of the state, because at the moment, we can't afford it.
Nope.
It's too big.
Mm-hmm.
It's being grifted in every single direction.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an economy that's stagnant. All these different forces coming at us, because I think we've lost. We don't. I think some people don't have a proper understanding what the role of the state.
And COVID, I think COVID had and furlough, and you can argue for and against furlough all day long, and I'm sure you have. But I think that COVID, when we went into particularly lockdown and furlough came in, we suddenly had a lot of people who weren't proud business owners, people who had never claimed anything from the state, suddenly finding that they were able to pay their mortgage or their rent because the state was supporting them to do so, and they needed the state to support them to be able to do that. And we were glued to our televisions every evening watching, whether it was Boris or whoever it was telling us what the latest figures were, and
clapping on nurses
on a Thursday evening. And God, nurses do the most phenomenal job, and have not been thanked enough during or since, or paid enough during or since COVID. And we became this nation that was just more dependent on the state than certainly in our generation we had ever been. We were looking at, it was state broadcasts we were looking to, right, every evening to find out where we could go, when we could go there, how long we could go there for. Were we going to be able to travel to see family at Christmas? Were we going to be able to go to our parents' funeral? Were we going to be able to go to a friend's wedding? We became entirely dependent on the state for all of our information. Our entire lives were quite literally dictated by what the state and the government of the day said we could and couldn't do. And for an awful lot of us, we were dependent on getting a payment from the state so that we could pay our rent, pay our mortgage, all of that. I'm not a parent, but, so many of my friends were, suddenly having to do the job of the state at home, right, with children. And you'll have had to have done that. You'll have done that.
Why don't you get this? Just concentrate.
My God. Yeah, the respect for teachers went through the roof, right? And then all of a sudden that disappeared, not overnight, because it wasn't. There was a tapering. But that went, and you have a whole cohort of people, whole generations, who kind of went, hang on a minute.
You're meant to fix everything.
But you fixed everything. And now we've got problems. Why aren't you fixing the problems? So, of course, we have become more reliant on the state. It was, it just seems to me a very obvious thing that was going to happen. And I'm not saying that the state shouldn't have stepped in. That's not my argument. But we have not, I come back to my earlier point, I suppose, we have not as politicians been good enough at explaining to people that was an unusual situation that is not sustainable. Because if you try to sustain that, and there are certain, arguably, politicians trying to sustain an element of that, and they will always be on the left.
Yes,
let's be honest.
Of course.
They will always be on the left. Then this is where you end up, in a situation where the economy is stagnating, where we've got too many people out of work, and where you have state reliance. And those people have always been around. I mean, I remember at university, one of the things that would remind me of why I joined the Conservative Party in 1997.
When they were very conservative.
So John Major was still Prime Minister. We were coming up to I was 17. We were coming up to the 97 general election. It wasn't going to be a good year.
No. But I really liked William Hague, by the way.
Oh, big fan.
Yeah, I really liked him. I actually thought he would have been a great Prime Minister.
He'd have been brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He still would be. But yeah, and I remember being at university, and I had a good friend at university who was and is Labour to her core. And I remember her saying to me, us having a conversation about, why are you Conservative and why are you Labour? Because she absolutely believed to her core that choosing not to work and to live a life where the state paid for your house, your rent, your outgoings was a right. I'd say a human right. We didn't really have that vocabulary, slightly different, but was a right.
But this is what makes me so angry, because the state aren't paying for it. Somebody else
I'm paying for it.
Yeah.
You're paying for it.
And that's what really. I got into a spat with a guy on Twitter this week where he said, but one, he wanted to ban private landlords.
Oh, that argument.
Yeah, that argument.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into that one, but he said that housing is a human right, and I said no, it isn't.
Oh.
At what point did it become a human right? Because we were humans without homes before before we got out the caves. And if you believe every human should is a human right, then you believe that other people should work and build homes for other people. Mm-hmm. But it's a deeper point on that, is that every time you think the state should step in, you're actually asking your neighbour to work harder. And so it's not that I don't believe that there can be some collective good that can come from this at times, but
absolutely.
But this idea that the state should step in and do everything is really asking workers to step in and do everything. Yeah. And I think some people miss that connection.
I think they do. It's a very convenient lie to tell yourself, isn't it? It's a really, really convenient lie to say that, well, there is this thing called the state and it lives somewhere in London.
And it has infinite money.
And it has infinite amounts of money.
Yeah.
And it can do no wrong, and it should just do everything. And it's a very convenient lie that socialism tells people.
Well, this goes back to me putting the private police in the town. The people who rejected it and hated it were all from the left. They were Labour Party voters, Green Party voters, and probably some Lib Dems. And it was very clear that the Conservative voters thought this is a great idea. And the point that was made is like, well, this is an unaccountable private security force. I said, well, it's not unaccountable. It's accountable to the law. Yeah. But it is private. And they said, well, who else? Who gets to, it's me as the person paying gets to decide whether they're doing a good job or not. Well, who do we make a complaint to? Well, you can make it to me. And if
the law is breached, they can make it via that route.
Of course. And they couldn't understand this. It's that everything should be provided by the state. And that's where we got into a disagreement. And then I think this is almost the battle of our times now. This is what we're facing as a country. There is a hard push for more social, and people say it's not socialism. To me, it's backdoor socialist, pseudo-socialist, whatever you want to call it. Is the state in control of everything, or back to more kind of sovereign, small state individuals? And I think that's quite a battle that we're facing at the moment. It's interesting. So, I mean, I asked you here to talk about PCC and policing, but you obviously have a broad set of ideas, political ideas. Would you consider running for office again? As an MP?
At the moment, no. And I think, as I said earlier, part of that is because I've been a bit spoilt by being a police and crime commissioner, where, as I said, I don't take the whip. I have an executive function. So I look at my colleagues in Parliament, particularly, now that the Tory party is in opposition. And I spent 10 years working in Parliament, so I not as obviously as an MP, but as a staffer. So I do understand the job, and a lot of it is around signposting constituents to, relevant services. There's obviously some amazing work in terms of, lawmaking that can and should be done. And I'm constantly lobbying my MPs. Non-crime hate incidents. I wrote a letter to to one of my MPs yesterday saying, he'd written to me about non-crime hate incidents, and I sort of wrote back saying, as a parliamentarian, please do everything in your power to legislate against them, get rid of them. They're dreadful. They just need to go. And so that MPs have a vital, really important, but I look at what I can do in my role, and I think it's about £10 million over the last 4.5 years that I've commissioned services around domestic abuse, drug and alcohol misuse, rehabilitation, reducing reoffending, homelessness.
Does that go to support charitable efforts?
So it's a real mix. So
So you can direct budget into charities?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
that's my main role. I would see that as the most important thing that I do.
Does that come out of the police's, did you say 350 million?
Some of it comes at 320.
Yeah.
An element of it does. Most of it actually comes from money that my office has bid for to the Home Office or to the Ministry of Justice.
Because there's
who will
chronic
release funds. Yeah.
Because we have chronic underfunding locally for these services, and they're not
So do
joined
we.
up.
Yeah. So part of the important role of the PCC, and we've talked about the governance piece, which is really, really vital. But the crime commissioner bit is absolutely important. This was the bit that the police authorities weren't doing, which is commissioning services locally. And I think that's probably the single most important thing I do. If you are somebody who is living in Surrey and thinks, what's my PCC ever done for me? It is about commissioning those local services to make sure that we are reducing reoffending. And Surrey has the second lowest reoffending rate in the country. We're really proud of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we're directing resources into the right place. So sometimes it'll be, for example, the county council are commissioning a domestic abuse refuge.
Yeah.
And I will go in and co-commission, or I will fund a youth worker so that there is somebody to work with children in a domestic abuse refuge, so that they have a full-time worker who is just dedicated to working with, 4 and 5 year olds, something like that, or is going in to do counselling for people. That's the most important work, I think, actually, that we do. And that's a really, really important part of it. That is all taxpayer money.
Yeah, but it's kind of I kind of understand it in that spending time with the local service providers who are looking after homeless, addicts, women who actually they said don't even use the term sex work because this is coercion.
It's coercion. It's coercion. It's modern slavery.
Yeah, or it's out of addiction and desperation.
Yeah,
this isn't.
It's not a choice.
Some people they're saying is a choice. They just choose to be a sex worker, but other people they're not choosing to be a sex worker. They are being raped or forced into it, or need the money. There's chronic underfunding for all these services, but they've said if we have the funding, we can stop reoffending. We can get people back into civil society. But when budgets are cut,
I've had my victims budget cut by 4.4% this year by the government, and that's a real challenge. So as police and crime commissioners, we have statutory responsibility for victims in our force areas.
Yeah.
To have my victims budget cut by 4.4% means I am having to scrap around for money elsewhere.
Do you ever sit there and think, where's all the money going? Where's it all going?
Well, I mean,
we're taxing more than ever.
Where's it going? I mean, look at the NHS.
Yeah.
Right? It's better funded than it's ever been. Not just under this government, under the last government too. Mental health has had more money than it's ever had. And yet in policing, we are experiencing a mental health crisis in the sense that our police officers are having to spend more and more time dealing with people in mental health crisis, which cannot be right, because what they're not therefore doing is able to spend time dealing with crime. I mean, I had a conversation, this is going back sort of 2 or 3 years, with somebody senior in mental health services in Surrey, who said to me, well, Lisa, the thing you've got to understand, and I hear that a lot, the thing you've got to understand is that, all of our as public services, we're all struggling. I said, yes, thank you for that lesson. But the difference is, I'm not walking into my local hospital, St. Peter's, and saying, can I borrow 2 nurses because there's been a burglary in Woking and I need some support with it. That is what you are asking of our police officers every day, every night of the week. And they are spending hours and hours and hours dealing with something that is a health crisis.
How is morale in the police?
Struggling.
Yeah.
I think, because one of the things I love talking to young police officers, new shiny police officers, when they come in at 19 or 21 or whatever, and sort of saying to them, why policing? I'm fascinated. Why did you come into policing? It's 2025. all of these options were available to you. You're a bright young lad living in Surrey, living in one of the wealthiest parts of one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Why policing? And ultimately, it comes down to public service, which is brilliant to hear. And they want to catch the bad guys. They don't want to be sitting in hospital with somebody who's experiencing a mental health crisis because somebody in the NHS, through a broken system, and it's not, you can't blame any individual, hasn't been able to help that person. I mean, I was looking at, every PCC will have access to their sort of chief's overnight log of the main crimes or, the main incidents that happened overnight. And I was looking this morning on the train on the way in to come and see you.
Yeah,
what were the main incidents that happened? And there were sort of 3 or 4 main incidents. And the first one was a desperately, desperately sad, was a suicide.
Okay.
Of a 40-year-old male who had been clearly experiencing mental health issues for some time, who had gone missing, was reported to the police, was a high-risk missing person because of his background, believed by the family potentially to have not been taking his medication, and unfortunately took his own life. And, things like that, you just kind of think, that's where the state has let somebody down. And the repercussions of that will be across this individual's girlfriend. It was his stepfather, I think, who originally reported him missing. His girlfriend had voiced concerns about him. They believed he wasn't taking his medication. He had shown signs over recent days, weeks, possibly months of not being well. What are we doing if we're not? This is a 40-year-old man. And we know that men in that age category, we know that men aged 18, 50, we know that they are the highest risk of suicide. What are we doing for our men and boys as a state if we are not protecting them from this? Because this is not somebody who wasn't showing signs. This is somebody who was on medication but was off his medication. Now, without knowing all of the details, but I hear too many of those.
So what should we be doing, in your opinion?
We should be intervening early. And I hear, and I think we all do, far too many cases, whether it's from parents or whether it's from individuals themselves, who say, I called a helpline and I was told that I wasn't considered high enough risk. And I didn't say that I was suicidal, so I wasn't considered a high enough risk. Or I've been on a waiting list for 6 months. Or I've spoken to my psychiatrist and I've said that I can't take the medication that I'm on because it's making me feel this way and that way and the other, and therefore I'm not taking it. And I'm not getting a referral for more help. And
so it's underfunding. But that's...
Is it underfunding though? I think I don't know that it is straightforward underfunding. Is it underfunding, or is it funding not finding its way to the right places?
Well, probably
which is
there's a nuanced answer.
There is. I don't think it's as easy as underfunding. I think we are not prioritising. And part of the problem is in the NHS is we've tried to prioritise everything. Yeah. And this idea that we have the best health service in the world.
Does anyone actually think that anymore?
I don't think so.
I think it's a sacred turd.
It is.
I do.
Yeah, it is. It's become a religion. And that's really, in the same way that I think ideology in politics can be really dangerous, I think it's really dangerous in the NHS as well.
Well, you're not going to win an election campaigning for austerity. You're not going to win an election campaigning for changing the NHS. I mean, the reform of just suggested some outline ideas of maybe reforming the NHS, and then from the Greens and from the Labour, from the Dems, it's like they want to destroy the NHS.
Yeah.
NHS, we understand when it was created, what it was created for. We're in a very different world now. It doesn't work. I use the private sector, it works a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we should get rid of some socialised healthcare.
No, and I would argue for an NHS that is free at sort of point of use for those who need it every day of the week. I'm type 1 diabetic who, uses more than my fair share of the NHS and have done since I was a child. And it's kept me alive. And I look over at sort of my cohort in the US, and it's horrific.
Yeah,
the amount of money they're paying for insulin, and diabetics are dying because they can't. I've never had to pay for a vial of insulin in my life, and that's kept me alive. But it's also meant that because I get excellent care under the NHS for my diabetes, it also means that I don't have kidney problems, I don't have retinopathy, I don't need limbs amputating, which in itself is saving. Prevention is always better than cure, obviously. So there are arguments for it, but the NHS is not free at the point of use universally. Dentists are not free at the point of use, and the cost of failure is huge, is absolutely massive. You look at the negligence bill in the NHS, it's absolutely massive. I have to say, I think Wes Streeting is trying very hard to do some really good things. I think we have to sort of, whatever side of the political fence you're on, I think when you see somebody on the other side trying to do some good, I think Wes Streeting is really, really trying to do some really, really good things. And I feel for him because he's up against a machine in terms of the BMA and the NHS that is largely going to be against him, and a political party that is not naturally going to find it easy to do some of those things as well.
I want to talk to you about one of my sponsors, Incogni. And that means we're going to talk about the weird world of spam. And I don't just mean those spam emails that you get day after day from companies you've never heard of and companies you've never signed up to. I'm also talking about those spam phone calls you get from those people who seem to know a little bit too much about you, trying to get your bank details. It's all a bit creepy, right? Now, this all comes from the world of data brokerage. There are companies out there collecting your data, building profiles, and sending that data to anyone who wants it, which is why when one of those scammers phones you up, they seem to know everything about you. Now, I've tried myself to get off these lists, try to get off the phone lists, try to get off the email lists. I unsubscribe from every one of these emails that comes in, but it's a game of whack-a-mole. It just never ends. And so this is where Incogni comes in. They do all the hard work for you. They reach out to these companies and they will get you legally removed from these lists. And I know because the last time they sponsored my show, I signed up and I didn't take the free option that they offered me. I wanted to pay for it. I wanted to see if you get value for money. And they removed me from 79 data broker lists. And so I've stayed on. I've stayed a subscriber and I have seen a massive decrease in the number of emails and phone calls I've been getting. So it's a great service. I recommend you check it out. If you're sick of this like I was, please head over to incogni.com/Peter and sign up. If you use the code Peter, you will get a lovely 60% discount. So that's incogni.com/Peter. It goes back to an honest conversation, though. We have a stagnant economy. Mm-hmm. We have growing unemployment. We have a state that's growing. Mm-hmm. We have a pension system we can't afford. Borrowing is up. We've got a budget next month, which let's wait and see.
Well, I see today. I mean, today you've got, I don't know whether it's Streeting or who is asking for it, but asking Rachel Reeves to allow them to use more of the private sector in the NHS. Now, if you're Rachel Reeves and you're doing this pragmatically...
Makes sense.
Of course it makes sense. It's a no-brainer. Is she going to face political backlash?
Of course.
Maybe, yeah, almost certainly from the Labour Party or from elements within the Labour Party. But it's you've got to choose, right? To govern is to choose. Choose. Make the right choice. And don't make it based on what are my poll numbers going to look like next week. That's easy for me to say.
I do. But I was trying to just get to the point I was trying to make is that borrowing's increasing. Mm-hmm. Interest rates are high. Our bond rates are getting too high. Mm-hmm. Inflation is going to bite again.
It is.
It's like, at what point do we stand back and say we are broke and we can't afford this? And people keep avoiding having that conversation. And so we just make everything a little bit worse, which means there's going to be less money for the NHS. I mean, I know they increase it, or there's going to be less for the police. There's less. Somewhere we're going to lose the money.
Something's got to give, right?
Yeah, and I think I go back to this point. It's basic economics. We're not being honest with people.
We're not being remotely honest with people, and we have got to be honest with people about it, whether it's in policing, whether it's in the NHS, whether it's in government, whether it's, if you keep voting for the stuff in this manifesto, any given manifesto, and expect it to be delivered and then get disappointed when it's not, and then vote for the promises again, we end up in this death spiral.
Well, this is going to make... So is your election at the same time as the general election?
No, we are on a separate cycle. So I was re-elected last year, in May last year. PCCs are next up for election in May 2028. So we're every 4 years.
Every 4 years still?
Yeah.
Obviously...
So we have fixed terms.
Yeah, but is 4 years the right amount of time? The reason I ask that is...
Yeah.
So I was very skeptical of PCCs coming into this, just because of my experience locally.
I can understand that.
But I'm hearing great arguments. The problem is our PCC locally is not popular in any way at all. I don't think he's done a good job at all, and that isn't just. I think that's across the board. But there's no way of getting rid of. I mean, I know there's ways, but it's very hard to get it him without an election.
Yeah, same as your local MP, right? It's no different.
Sure, but I'm wondering if perhaps a bit like the US has its midterms, it's the 2-year cycle. Yeah. Perhaps this should be a 2-year cycle. I know that put pressure on you, but do you need 4 years to be able to do the job?
I think you do. Yeah,
you can't prove yourself in 2 years.
I don't think you can. And my first term was 3 years.
Okay,
and it's not particularly coming in after my predecessor was voted in as a Conservative, but then left the party and became an independent. And you come in with a different set of priorities, inevitably, and with different things that you want to do. And it does take time because, the £10 million that I've talked about that we've put into local services, that takes time to turn around. You're saying to a domestic abuse refuge, here's £750,000 in order to be able to house this many women or do this program or that program. That takes time to work itself through. I was 2 years into my term before I appointed my first chief constable. I needed those couple of years to understand. I felt very, very fortunate that I was not in a position of having to appoint a chief constable early in my term.
Okay.
My first year or so. I wouldn't have understood enough to have been able to do that. I felt a couple of years, I now understand enough to know the kind of things that the Surrey public wants out of a chief constable, how the force works, what the budget looks like, what the challenges are going to be for a chief constable coming in. And so was able to appoint the right person. I had 4 candidates, all of whom could have done the job, all of whom on paper looked great, one of whom was head and shoulders clearly above the rest, but on paper, not necessarily.
Did you have to sack somebody to put that person in?
No.
You didn't?
No. And he has come in and has done a genuinely phenomenal job, has turned the force around and has made Surrey one of the best performing police forces in the country. But I needed the time to maybe understand what that needed, what the force needed and what that role needed. And then he needs time to be able to, it wouldn't have been fair for me to say after his first year, right, well, I'm judging whether you get to stay on based on your first 12 months.
And in terms of when people vote for a PCC, it's probably a hard question to answer, but how much are they voting for the person? How much are they voting for the party?
Oh, I think it's party.
So
primarily.
2028 might be quite difficult for you in that you could do a great job.
Yeah, and still.
But if a turquoise PCC candidate comes up, they might just win because they're turquoise.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's actually a problem.
Yeah, of course. And that's a problem with all party politics, isn't it? And that's.
But it's slightly different in that. So I think there's a strong argument for why people may vote for a reform government because they feel let down by the Conservative and the Labour, and they just want something different. And I would say there's parts of the Reform Party that are making sensible, good arguments. They might not be able to do it, but they're making sensible, good arguments that are resonating with voters.
Yeah.
But a PCC or a mayor could be doing a fantastic job. But because the parties let the country down, they might lose their position, and that's really sad.
Yes, and it happened. And I think it happened last year. I think Festus was very much Festus, who I think was doing a brilliant job as Police and Crime Commissioner in Bedfordshire, was a victim of that Conservative backlash that we saw in 2024, that we saw last year. I survived it because in Surrey I faced the Liberal Democrats rather than, we don't really have much Labour. We have a very small amount of reform. There wasn't a reform candidate against me. Festus was definitely a victim of that. I think we had other Conservative PCCs who were a victim of that last year of that
Yes.
backlash, that anti-conservative backlash. I think all politicians like to kid themselves that we have a substantial personal vote. I think that's absolute bollocks, I have to say.
There must be a little, but there must be some.
I think certainly I was first elected in 2021 after I'd been selected 10 weeks before the election. Nobody knew who I was, right?
Yeah.
I had a very, very small, and I am talking minute, vote of women who voted for me purely because of what I'd said about I don't think biological males can ever be women regardless of how they dress.
Yeah.
And I'd said that very early on
You're so
because
crazy.
I know, crazy behaviour. I was asked about it, and I was asked about it, and I said, yeah, this is what I think. And so there was a very, very small number of women who voted for me, and who wrote to me afterwards to say, I've never voted Tory in my life, but I voted for you because you're the only one who said this. But I won in 2021 because I was wearing a blue rosette and was the Conservative candidate on the ballot paper.
Yeah.
Last year, there will have been a slightly more people who will have gone, oh, yeah, no, I think I've heard of her. And isn't she the woman who said that trans women can't be women, or has sort of stood up for this or said that? But generally speaking, it will be because I was Conservative and because I was against the Liberal Democrats, who are not particularly trusted on law and order. They don't, even Liberal Democrats voters don't really vote Lib Dem on law and order.
No. But there's a visibility issue then.
Yeah.
Which, that's
Nobody knows who their PCC is, generally speaking. I mean, say we are
20% no? I think we've got it here.
It was a bit higher, and sorry, it depended on whether you had other elections going on at the same time, which in parts of Surrey we did, and in parts of Surrey we didn't. But PCCs we're sort of the forgotten bit of the political system. Nobody talks about us. We don't talk about ourselves terribly much. We're sort of, we're a big thing in our own living room, right?
Yeah.
And particularly at a time when I think the general election last year was 60% was turnout. Yes. I mean, you didn't vote, right?
Didn't vote.
You're politically somebody who was interested in intelligence, all of that,
By
and
the
you
way,
didn't vote.
I get attacked for that, but I say not voting is a vote. I'm making a point.
You're making a point. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see a system, almost Australian-style system, where you could turn up to a ballot paper and tick none of the above.
So you're forced to vote, but you have to...
But you are making a point that I'm absenting myself from all of these. I don't trust any of these people. Because I think that would in itself tell us something. But yeah, PCCs are... We're not a cohort of people who are well known even within our own communities, which is interesting when you consider what we do and the fact that we own all of the budget for policing, all of the assets, and can appoint and, if necessary, dismiss a chief constable and have that commissioning power. Mayors are better known. I think that's a really good argument in favour of mayors and having that PCC role rolled in as well.
Will you go for re-election in 28?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's such an unfair question. But let me ask you in a different way. Do you think there will be PCCs who will defect because they think they're doing a good job and want to stay in that job?
Oh, we've had one.
Oh, you've had one already?
Yeah, we've had one. The Leicestershire PCC was a Conservative MEP for years.
Yeah.
And defected to Reform. I mean, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it, but I assume because he thought that was the only way of getting re-elected.
Well, because... So reform, like I say, I think there are areas of reform that they've got good arguments. I think Zia Youssef makes very good arguments.
Yeah, I think he's thoughtful.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with him, but he's thinking about things.
Yeah, and I disagree
he's
with
thoughtful
him
about
as well. Richard Tice, I disagree with him. But what I'm saying is I'm seeing some rational, practical thinking and arguments being made. But building a party with hundreds of councillors and hundreds of MP candidates and mayoral candidates, that's a big job.
Yeah.
And there may be people who will run for PCC who will win it because they're reformer, they're not really qualified and could do a terrible job. And that would be my worry.
Yeah.
So that's
an argument against PCCs. It's a sort of single point of failure, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Lord Blair, he's not a fan of PCCs.
No.
No.
They tend not to be.
So, conscious of time. This has been brilliant. I could talk to you for hours.
God.
Are you a Tottenham fan, by the way?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Was it something I said?
No, I read it beforehand.
Was it my general demeanour?
I was going to make fun of you because all my friends are Tottenham fans. So I think I'll just leave with kind of like a big question. Well, actually, no. I wanted to ask you about how much time are police officers wasting not policing? Is there too much paperwork? That's what local police said to me. They said, it's just fucking endless.
Yeah.
Can that be solved?
Yes. Yeah, I think police officers are spending an awful lot of time doing that. And I think there are good reasons and bad reasons for it. Some of it is because, quite rightly, policing, as the most visible arm of the state at its most coercive, quite rightly has to justify what it does. So if it comes and enters your home and arrests you in front of your children and takes your mobile phone and your computer devices, then it's quite right that officer who does that has to go back and justify that decision.
Yeah.
Right? And that is going to involve a certain amount of form filling to explain how they came to that decision, why they did it, why they think that it was the only way of dealing with that issue. So let's say you were reported something. Well, I believe that arresting Peter and taking his devices was the only way in order for us to be able to conduct an investigation to determine whether he committed a crime or not. That's going to involve inevitably an amount of form filling. Have we gold-plated that? Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is down to Home Office reporting rules and the kind of things. And I think it's the duplication that police officers get very frustrated with, and I get frustrated with. There should be a much easier way of doing it. It's crazy that in 2025 we haven't come up with one way of an officer being able to say, this is what happened, this is what I did, and that being duplicated across systems. So yes, it can absolutely be reduced. And it's very frustrating. So that's a massive element of what police are doing that they arguably shouldn't be or could definitely be reduced. And I also think there's a massive amount of terror in the system. Police officers doing things and being really worried that they are going to be found at fault for doing it, which stops them doing things, which is terrible in itself. It's a real problem. And that leads, unfortunately, to more form filling and this sort of thing of I need to justify every single decision that I've taken and every thought I had. And then the other side of it, as we talked about a little bit, is around things like mental health and police doing things that police really shouldn't be doing. And that's whether it's doing the NHS's job, doing the job of checking on family members because they haven't been heard from for a week when really, you could probably drive from Guildford to Woking and check on your mum.
Yeah.
And we do get that still, less so, but we still get an element of that. So there's an element of that happens as well. Or things like non-crime hate incidents where police really shouldn't be spending time. And, there is an idea that that's all that police do, which is absolute rubbish. That is, the idea that police are sitting on Twitter looking for stuff is rubbish. But of course, you get reports in. And, like I said, I've been reported for a number of non-crime hate incidents for things I've said on Twitter or I've said in the media or I've said to podcaster like you. And so somebody reports it, which means a police officer, because it's been reported, then has to go and look at it.
All that bollocks needs to go.
All of that bollocks needs to go.
That just needs to go.
All of that needs to go. So yes, they are doing things. Cut down on that. I'd be a very happy PCC.
And just a final question. So based on your experience so far in doing the role, if you were talking to central government, what are the big changes that you would like to see?
Within policing?
Yeah.
Make it easier for police officers to use their discretion, whether it's around hate crime and non-crime hate incidents. I mean, get rid of non-crime hate incidents, first of all. Train police officers properly and allow them to use their discretion without fear of being hauled up in front of whether it's the court of public opinion or a misconduct trial. When they've taken a decision, go back to what is the motivation for taking the decision.
What? Give me a good example where that may happen.
So we see police officers get, and because as PCC I deal with complaints, we deal with complaints against police officers once they've been through the system. And you get vexatious complaints against police officers because somebody doesn't like something. And body-worn camera has been brilliant, actually, because you're able to say, well, no, they didn't say that. They demonstrably didn't say that. Or they did read you your rights when you're saying they didn't, because we've got it on body-worn camera. But it's back to this error terror again. Allow police officers to use their discretion and trust themselves and trust them until they have proven otherwise.
Yeah, interesting. Lisa, brilliant. I really enjoyed this. I think 2 hours just flew by then. There's so much more we could talk about, especially how Tottenham are shit. But we'll do another time. I'm really interested to dig into this a bit more at some point. I think it's really interesting. I'll be interested to see what happens with your re-election. You've definitely shifted my view on this because I just think I've got a very negative view because I don't think our PCC is doing a great job. So, we'll see. But thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you.
See you all soon.